Hey there guys, how is it going? Tyler here with your Movie Fix, and today we're going to be talking about one of my personal favorites, Man of Steel. With Batman v Superman just around the corner, just a few days, there's people that are going to be seeing it tonight. What a better time to talk about it than now. Now this is Zack Snyders' take on bringing the modern Superman to the big screen. Now we've always known that he's an alien, but we never really got to see it explored in the way that it was in this film, which was Superman in an epic sci-fi action movie. And one of the things that I really love that we haven't seen before is that this is more of a movie about Kal-El. It's less of a movie about Superman, and it's about Clark Kent discovering who Kal-El is and really finding his place in the world. Now, this is a movie that's very special to me. It's very near and dear to my heart, and this was the first time I went to a Thursday night premiere for a movie. I was on the 2-year hype train. Everything about this movie was so exciting to me, and the experience I got in the theater is something I have yet, to really get again, and I'm hoping that is something I can feel with these future DC movies, because obviously I have an affinity for DC Comics and the characters. I've grown up with them. They've been a big part of my life, always. And that's part of why I love this movie so much. I actually saw it 6 times in theaters, and I don't even want to say how many times I've actually seen the movie since then. Feel free to comment down below and ask me, because the answer is pretty damn comical, how many times I've seen this movie. Now, this is definitely not the Superman for everyone. Not everyone is really going to enjoy this movie. I'm not here to tell you that this is the greatest movie of all time and you need to like it. I'm just here to tell you why I love the movie so much and some of the common criticisms that people have with it. And I think one of the problems that this movie faced, it had a very uphill battle with going against what pop culture Superman is, the preconceived notions that a lot of audiences and older people had with what they think Superman is, which isn't the most accurate representation who he is in pop culture, this goody two-shoes, the Boy Scout. This was very much a post-crisis Superman. This was Superman in this movie. This is the most accurate representation we have ever gotten. But I definitely think that Zack Snyder, he had the tall task of reintroducing a modern Superman. And I think he succeeded. And now that we have gotten this film out of the way, we really get to explore who Superman is. Now, while this may be my favorite film, I definitely don't think it's without flaws. I don't think it's a perfect movie. Not that I have many issues with it, but I do want to talk about those before I get to the good things. And one of my issues is that I think Henry Cavill was pretty much robbed in this movie of lines. Michael Shannon, Zod, got more lines, I'm pretty sure, than Clark, Superman. And that just kind of killed me, because if you've ever watched any interviews with Henry Cavill, if you watched any of the behind-the-scenes stuff, Henry Cavill is Superman. This guy embodies him so perfectly. It's such, genuine, inspired casting. He's such a nice guy who brings so much to the character that I didn't think was represented the best in this movie. And it's not that we didn't get any characterization from Clark, because actually most of it that we got was from him being a kid, and which people seem to forget when they complain about there's no characterization. While we didn't get the most character growth from Henry Cavill playing Clark, we did get a lot of the character growth from Clark as a kid, which is very in line with how it goes in the comics. That's how it goes with all of us. Growing up is a very big thing, and that's something that I think they nailed in this movie. But there are times when there were Superman-esque moments that were missed, that were passed. And especially during the Zod and Superman fight, when Zod's giving his big monologue about, you chose these people over us, blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't say anything. I feel like, and there were even bits of dialogue from the trailers that didn't make it into the movie that I think would have been a very awesome exchange between Zod and Clark. It was just missed opportunities, and that's one of my biggest issues. As much as I loved Henry Cavill as the character, and I really think he's going to bring it in the future movies, but that's just one of my big issues. That's the only big issue I have with the movie, but I do love Henry Cavill as Clark. And a smaller issue I have was sometimes the cinematography. Well, as a whole, I think there are plenty of amazing shots, and I do think the movie looks very good. There are a couple of times when the shaky cam was a little too much, like some of the scenes on the Kent farm and with the flashbacks and the Smallville fight specifically. Now, the shaky cam doesn't give me a headache. It doesn't bug me. It doesn't make me nauseous or anything like that. But I'm a big fan of very wide, panning, cinematic shots, and I don't think the shaky cam was the best fit for this movie and when they used it. But I get what Zack was trying to do, was trying to make you feel like you were there, and he succeeded. But in the future, I would like to see less of that, and that's why I'm so glad we got Larry Fong in there. And I'm not saying I hate the shaky cam, I'm just saying that I think it could have looked a little better, but I did love those fight scenes in Smallville. So now that I got some of the things that I disliked out of the way, I want to talk about some of the things that really worked for me, and that's going to be the cast. Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Lawrence Fishburne, Michael Shannon, and Russell Crowe. So many people. I mean, just an A-list cast going on there. And the standout definitely being Michael Shannon Zod, who really, really worked for me because he was a villain. Of course, this is what makes great villains. He was a villain who thought he was doing the right thing. And that's something that worked very well. I think he had some of the most quotable lines. You see memes of Zod all over, chat boards and forums and stuff like that. I absolutely loved him. I think he's a fantastic villain. It's a shame we're not going to see more of him. Well, kinda, in Batman v Superman. But yeah, he was phenomenal in this movie. He definitely had the best performance. And yeah, some people like to poo-poo on David Goyer for this film. But I think there was less issues of David Goyer. And you got to remember, David Goyer and Christopher Nolan were actually taking a break from Dark Knight Rises to write out the story of this movie. And I definitely think Chris Terrio is a huge step up from Goyer. But I did still really enjoy the story. He's a great story man for Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, all those that he worked on the story, not the script specifically for each of them. But the idea of having the Kryptonians come to Earth and wanting to reach out to Clark and Kal-El, and they want to rebuild their civilization, and they think they're doing it in the right way, but they aren't. And just the whole conflict that was going on really worked for me. It resonated with me, and I loved it. I loved exploring the Kal-El persona, exploring Clark growing up. That was all stuff that really worked. And that's another thing. The flashbacks with Clark and stuff like that, those worked for me, and I really enjoyed them. And the special effects and the fight scenes, those are going to be unparalleled for a long time. Maybe Zack is going to one-up himself with Batman v Superman, but you would be amazed how much of that was actually practical, what they shot, practically, as much as they possibly could. And it's kind of funny, I'll see people complain about certain shots in the movie. I'm like, well, that was actually a practical shot. And they had a really fantastic blending of CG to practical that's pretty much seamless. I mean, this was top-notch, some of the best CG you've ever seen in a movie. And you do need that in a movie like this, or it's not going to work. And I absolutely loved it. And the fight scenes, unparalleled, like I said. The fight scene between Zod and Superman, that's what Loki and Thor should have been. And we got two normal guys duking it out on top of the, Stark Tower or whatever. But seeing this very well represented, powerful Superman, what he should have been, he wasn't nerfed, he wasn't underpowered, was fucking phenomenal. I mean, they were punching and breaking the sound barrier. That's fucking Superman right there. That is so awesome. And that one shot, the POV shot of him going and punching Zod, beautiful. I mean, that the fight scene was so awesome, and I can't imagine how anyone could ever complain about it. And speaking of complaints, I do want to talk about some of the common criticisms for this movie. And, this movie was scrutinized and judged so unfairly. I've never seen a comic book movie looked under a microscope so hard as this one. I'll just never really understand it. And one of the big things, and some of these are problems to people objectively, and some of these are problems that Superman fans had with the movie. And I think a lot of it comes from not understanding what the director was trying to do, or not paying attention to the movie hard enough. And one of the things that worked for me, that didn't work for a lot of people, was the death of Paul Kent. And I think you can look at that as several different ways with what was really going on there. He got in the argument with Clark, and he's saying, "You're not my real parents." He could have just been a genuinely good dad. He's being the father. I want my son and my wife, go be safe, go to the overpass, take your mother, get up there. I'll take care of this. And he saves the little girl, and he goes back to save the dog simply because he's a good man. But you could also look at it because he is a man, he's flawed. You could look at it as Jonathan was bitter at Clark. He's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not your father, but I can also do these great things. I can be brave. I can be courageous, and I can save these people. And although people like the idea of Paul Kent having a heart attack because there's nothing Clark can do, bullshit, he can do CPR and he can take him to the hospital. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me either. He was put in a situation where he couldn't do anything. I think, that look that he gives Clark when he waves him and he tells him no, that is an apology to me. That is him saying, I know I messed up. I'm so sorry. I still need to protect your identity though. Please don't do this. I made my mistakes. And that was a really powerful emotional moment in the film for me, and I feel bad for the people that couldn't really appreciate it. And moving on, some of the people that complained about there being a forced romance between Lois and Clark, I disagree with that. And I think it could have been a very forced romance, but it wasn't. He saved her 2 or 3 times, and this is a woman who's figured out his secret. He has somebody he can confide in. As always, Lois is his grounding to humanity and to Earth, and that's something we were introduced to. It was hinted at. We were going to get more of it. Nobody was throwing around "I love you." If he would have said "I love you" to Lois, or she would have said "I love you," that would have just made me roll my eyes. That would have been terrible. But all we got was a kiss. So what? That's a normal, natural thing to people who are attracted to each other, who have an affinity for each other. So that's fine, and it worked for me. It could have been overboard. They could have thrown out "I love yous," and that would have been a forced romance. But getting a hint that these people have a connection and they have a possible relationship down the road, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And on to the fun one. Too much destruction in this movie. Come on, guys. Again, a lot of this comes from people not paying attention to what was going on. Okay, just to set the record straight, Superman did not destroy Metropolis. He did not destroy the city. Zod was the one throwing him through buildings. Zod was the one taking buildings down with his heat vision. And it was the World Engine that did everything. The World Engine is what caused all of the problems and destroyed about 90% of what was going on. So, no, that's baloney. But I do think this would have stopped some of the complaints, is that there may be 1 or 2 too many explosions, like in the Smallville fight where he punches Namek into the train. Why does the train explode? I don't know. Why does like a mini nuke go off? That wasn't necessary. And also when Zod kicks the oil rig, or the oil tanker, he should have just stopped it. That would have been, a quick little Superman moment, whatever. But they wanted the explosion. I didn't have any real issues with it, but that's something that I think maybe put a couple of people overboard on. There's too much going on, and I didn't think there was mind-numbing action. This is Superman. This is what's going to happen. This is what happens in the books, and this movie worked for a lot of people. I've shown this movie to a lot of people who had no interest in the movie. They think Superman's a boring character, and after they saw this movie, they fucking loved Superman. They love this character, and they love the story. So I think this movie did do its job in reintroducing it to modern audiences. And there are, of course, some people complaining that they turned Superman into Batman, which I will full-heartedly disagree forever. There was nothing to indicate that. He wasn't mopey. He was sad, he was conflicted, but that's nothing new to Superman. If you've ever read a Superman story, Superman's a very conflicted character. And this was displayed perfectly in the movie, is that Superman is a very bright person. He's a bright soul surrounded by darkness. He's in dark circumstances and situations, and that is why Superman shines. And this is even shown in plenty of contrast with what's going on. If you look at just the color grading from the Metropolis battle to the Kent farm, it's very warm, and just the colors are totally different. And he's always, I don't know if you ever paid attention, he's smiling all the time when he's around his mom. And not that should be that big of a deal, but I don't know why people complain about saying that they turned Superman to Batman, which is just a total fucking farce and not true. It's an over-exaggeration. So really, with this being my favorite film, while I do think it has its flaws, I think this is a flawed masterpiece. If I really had to give it a rating, I'm going to go with a 9.5 out of 10. This is a movie I unabashedly love, unapologetically. So comment down below, what do you think about this movie? This is something a lot of people feel very strongly about. What do you think of these common criticisms? And what are your thoughts on the movie in general? So this has been your Movie Fix, guys. Be sure to subscribe for more movie news, movie reviews, and trailer reactions and breakdowns, stuff like that. I'll see you on the next video.